The laws of the worship of stars and their statutes. This section contains 51 mitzvah divided into 2 positive commandments and 49 negative commandments. These are: 1. Not to show interest in the worship of false gods. 2. Not to stray after the thoughts of one's heart or the sights one's eyes behold. 3. Not to curse God. 4. Not to worship false gods with the types of service with which they are customarily served. 5. Not to bow down to false gods. 6. Not to make an idol for oneself. 7. Not to make an idol even for others. 8. Not to make images even for decoration. Not to persuade others to worship false gods. 10. To burn an apostate city. 11. Never to rebuild it. 12. Not to derive benefit from any of its property. 13. Not to persuade a single individual to worship false gods. 14. Not to love Amazit. 15. Not to reduce one's hatred for him. 16. Not to save his life. 17. Not to advance any arguments on his behalf. 18. Not to withhold information that will lead to his conviction. 19. Not to prophesy in the name of false gods. 20. Not to listen to anyone who prophesies in the name of false gods. 21. Not to give false prophecy even in the name of God. 22. Not to fear executing a false prophet. 23. Not to swear in the name of a false god. 24. Not to perform the deeds associated with an oath. 25. Not to perform the deeds associated with a yidoni. 26. Not to offer to Molech. 27. Not to erect a pillar for purposes of worship. 28. Not to prostrate oneself on hewn stones. 29. Not to plant an Asherah. 30. To destroy false gods and all their objects of worship. 31. Not to benefit from false gods and all their objects of worship. 32. Not to benefit from ornaments that have adorned false gods. 33. Not to establish a covenant with nations who worship false gods. 34. Not to show them favor. 35. Not to allow them to settle in our land. 36. Not to follow their customs or manner of dress. 37. Not to act as a soothsayer. 38. Not to practice black magic. 39. Not to practice divination. 40. Not to cast spells. 41. Not to seek information from the dead. 42. Not to consult an OV. 43. Not to consult a Yidoni. 44. Not to practice sorcery. 45. Not to shave the temples of our heads. 46. Not to shave off the corners of our beards. For a man not to wear a woman's apparel. 48. For a woman not to wear armament or a man's apparel. 49. Not to tattoo one's body. 50. Not to make cuts in one's flesh. 51. Not to tear out hair in mourning for the dead. The explanation of all these mitzvot is detailed in the chapters that follow. During the times of Enosh, humanity made a significant error due to misguided counsel from the wise men of that generation, including Enosh himself. Their mistake stemmed from the following belief. They reasoned that God created the stars and spheres to govern the world. He placed them in positions of honor, making them ministers before him. Therefore, it was deemed fitting to praise, glorify, and honor these celestial entities. They perceived this as aligning with God's will, much like a king desires the honor of his servants. Honoring these celestial servants was seen as an expression of honor to God himself. This notion led them to construct temples dedicated to the stars and offer sacrifices. They praised and glorified the stars, prostrating themselves before them, believing that these actions fulfilled God's will. This marked the essence of false god worship and the rationale behind it. They did not deny the existence of other gods, but rather believed they were serving God by honoring his creations. Jeremiah conveyed this message, declaring, 10:7-8, Who will not fear you, King of the nations, for to you it is fitting. Among all the wise men of the nations and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. They have one foolish and senseless notion. They conceive of their empty teachings as wood. meaning all recognized God alone. Their error lay in misinterpreting what constitutes his will. Over time, false prophets emerged, claiming divine commands to serve specific stars or all stars. They advocated for sacrifices, libations, temple construction, and image creation to facilitate worship for all, including women, children, and the common people. These prophets presented visions of celestial forms, claiming them as the true likenesses of the stars. This led to the widespread creation of images in temples beneath trees and atop hills. People gathered to bow down before these images, influenced by false prophets who declared them sources of benefit and harm, deserving of worship and fear. Priests further reinforced this belief, promising success and prosperity through these practices. Subsequently, other deceivers arose, claiming to have been contacted by stars, spheres, or angels, each dictating unique modes of worship. Consequently, these practices permeated the world. People engaged in strange and increasingly distorted forms of image worship, offering sacrifices and prostrating themselves. As years passed, God's glorious name faded from memory, absent from speech and thought. The common people, women, and children knew only the images of wood and stone, the temples they were raised to venerate, and the names in which they swore oaths. The wise among them believed that the stars and spheres were the sole deities, crafting images in their likeness. The eternal rock was unrecognized by almost everyone in the world, with the exception of a few individuals, such as Chinook, Methuselah, Noach, Shem, and Ever. This continued until the birth of Abraham, the patriarch and a pillar of the world. After this mighty man was weaned, he embarked on a journey of exploration and contemplation. Even as a child, he pondered day and night, how does the sphere continue to revolve without any control? What force propels it? Surely it cannot revolve on its own. He had no teacher or guide, being surrounded by idolaters in Kasdim. His parents and community were idol worshippers, and he participated in their practices. However, his heart sought understanding. Eventually, his comprehension led him to the path of truth. He recognized a single God who controlled the sphere, the creator of all, without any other deities. He realized the world's error in worshiping stars and images, which obscured the truth. Abraham was 40 years old when he recognized his creator. Upon this recognition, he challenged the inhabitants of Kasdim, arguing against their misguided ways. He broke their idols and taught that only the God of the world deserved worship. He advocated for prostration, sacrifices, and libations to God alone, so that future generations might recognize him. Conversely, he called for the destruction of all images to prevent the errors of those who believed in no other gods. His arguments prevailed, but the king sought to kill him. Miraculously saved, he journeyed to Haran. There, he proclaimed God's existence to all, traveling from city to city and country to country, reaching Canaan and declaring God's existence, as stated in Genesis 21:33. And he called there in the name of the Lord, the eternal God. When people gathered to inquire about his statements, he tailored his explanations to their understanding, leading them towards the truth. Thousands gathered around him, forming the men of the house of Abraham. He instilled this foundational principle in their hearts, composing texts and teaching it to his son Isaac. Isaac continued the teachings, turning hearts towards God. He also taught Jacob, appointing him as a teacher. Jacob, in turn, taught others and guided their hearts to God. He also taught his children, selecting Levi as the leader and head of the academy to teach the way of God and observe the mitzvot of Abraham. Jacob commanded his sons that leadership should remain within the descendants of Levi to preserve the teachings. This concept strengthened among Jacob's descendants and those around them, creating a nation that knew God. However, during their extended stay in Egypt, the Jews, with the exception of the tribe of Levi, who remained faithful to the patriarch's mitzvot, adopted the Egyptians' star worship. The fundamental principle established by Abraham was in danger of being uprooted, and Jacob's descendants risked returning to the errors of the world. Out of love and to uphold the oath made to Abraham, God brought forth Moses, the master of all prophets, to redeem the Jews. After Moses prophesied and God chose Israel as his inheritance, he bestowed mitzvot upon them, revealing the path to serve him and outlining the judgment for idol worship and those who stray after it.